You're walking through the tropical Amazon rainforest. All of a sudden, you spot the green anaconda coming right at you. The snake lunges faster than you can react. Soon enough, its thick body is coiling around you. The force feels like an elephant sitting on your chest. The anaconda is a constrictor. It wraps its body around an animal and keeps squeezing until it doesn't feel a heartbeat anymore. Gulp! Usually, animals don't survive the snake's hug. But let's assume you're in a tough, oxygenated protective suit and manage to remain intact. The reptile's lower and upper jaws are held together with stretchy ligaments. This allows the snake to open its mouth more than 160 degrees. In humans, this angle is 40 degrees tops. That's why the anaconda can move its mouth over something that's much bigger than its head. Like you, right now. The snake starts walking its jaws around and over your body, trying to move you down its esophagus, the tube that connects its mouth and stomach. Luckily, the anaconda only has fangs for holding its prey, not biting, and these fangs don't contain venom. Still, the view in front of your eyes is terrifying. The top jaw is decorated with 4 rows of backward-pointing teeth. This tooth shape prevents animals from squeezing out of the reptile's mouth. And it sure is wet in here. Anacondas produce loads of saliva. They can't chew their food, and swallowing it is a much trickier process than in many other animals. Inside the snake's mouth, there are several glands that make saliva to moisten their lunch. I mean, you. The next thing you feel is something squeezing around you. The anaconda has 2 stages of swallowing. First, its muscles squeeze together and force the food down the reptile's body. After that, the anaconda moves and bends its body and spine so that the ribs push against the animal inside it. This pressure makes the food smaller. If you were able to see the whole swallowing process, it would look as if the snake's crawling its body over you. You feel uncomfortable. It's too hot. You can't move a limb, and your body is being constantly bent. The reptile is moving you into its stomach. You have no neighbors. The anaconda can only eat one thing at a time. If you could see from the outside, you'd notice its stomach is massively swollen. It also has a distinct human-shaped form. It's because the snake lacks a breastbone. Its ribs are free-moving and can spread apart. After you're safely tucked inside the snake, you feel the reptile move. It's looking for a safe place to digest you. Anacondas, like all snakes, are cold-blooded. They need a warm place to speed up their metabolism. A cold snake will have a big problem with digestion. The anaconda's stomach produces powerful acids and enzymes that dissolve first the softest and then the toughest stuff. Your hair and nails would be the last to get completely digested. If you didn't have this awesome suit protecting you, it wouldn't take long for the snake to digest you. You'd become liquid. All the nutrients in you would power the snake's cells, and the rest would make itself out the exit in about a month. And now, the good news. The anaconda wouldn't want to eat you in the first place. You're simply too large and not worth the risk. This process would make the snake slow, clumsy, and vulnerable. After seeing you, the snake's likely to get scared and flee, or give you a good squeeze to protect itself. So best keep your distance in the future. Now the question is, how to get out of here? Warning, monster ahead. Not the best thing to see written on an old wooden sign at an entrance to a rainforest you just ran into. You're a professional treasure hunter and wildlife explorer. Right now, you're being chased by some mean-looking poachers, but those guys are amateurs. You dart left, hide, then run again. Works every time. Why were those guys shouting so much? Back to business. For several years now, you've been on a quest for a pirate's chest. Inside, a 300-year-old royal medallion. And according to this old map, the chest is somewhere here, in this jungle. Chirping birds, hungry bugs, screaming monkeys, hopefully nothing too hungry. You walk to the river and freeze. Suddenly, total silence. Not a single sound anywhere except the river. Right then, the silence is broken. Something's definitely sneaking up behind you. You turn around and see a long, thick snake's body. You raise your head slowly. 2 huge fangs are hanging out right above your eyes, and a long forked tongue is gently licking your nose. On the other end of the tongue is a deep, dark mouth. Looks like a black hole. You'd fit in there no problem. You take a step back and stumble over a rock. You fall. That's the last thing you remember. Then, darkness. Looks like you'll be out for a while. Time to find out what monster you just met. Meet Titanoboa, the largest snake that ever lived on Earth, and the largest land vertebrate after the dinosaurs. It's 42 feet long. That's like 7 adults, or more than half a subway car. And it could weigh up to 1.5 tons. All modern pythons and anacondas are descendants of this ancient reptile that lived 60 million years ago. Except for this one, apparently. This snake isn't venomous, but it uses its long fangs to grab food. And its jaw is built for business. Imagine an empty car being crushed by the Brooklyn Bridge. That's what it feels like to be a Titanoboa's afternoon snack. Back to you. The Titanoboa was about to take a closer look at you, but you fell and passed out. The huge snake wasn't expecting its lunch to be quite so willing. It sniffs your body, looks it up and down. You're not a threat, so it doesn't need to squeeze you before... The snake opens its wide mouth and begins to swallow. Snakes have a special jaw, divided into several parts. They're connected by ligaments and muscles, so snakes can open their mouth up wide, like motorbike wide. But today, Titanoboa doesn't need to try so hard. Gulp. Titanoboas use their huge fangs to push food down their throats. While it's swallowing, Titanoboa likes to use saliva to grease up its lunch and make it more slippery, much easier to swallow. Bit by bit, you disappear from view. Your clothes are soaking wet at this point. A few minutes later, you've disappeared from view and the snake looks really fat. And that's when you wake up. So how do we know what would happen? Some guy in a full-body protective suit actually tried to get inside an anaconda on purpose. Darkness. You open your eyes and take a deep breath. An unpleasant liquid gets in your mouth a bit, and you cough. It's hard to scratch your itchy nose. You're squeezed in from all sides. Titanoboa has a super muscly throat. At first, you panic. What happened? Where are you? You scream, but no sound. It doesn't exactly smell great in there. And that's when you realize where you are. You can't see daylight anymore. Uh-oh. Then you feel a weird wiggling side to side. Titanoboa's on the move. A python can digest its lunch in a matter of weeks. It all depends on the size of the food. This Titanoboa just ate a relatively small snack. Shouldn't take it more than a few hours. But there is some good news. Since you're not that big, you have at least a bit of space to wriggle around in. You reach into your pants pocket. Your clothes, your hands, they're soaking wet. Nasty. Of course, everything else you brought with you is soaked also. Your map, matches, granola bar. Also, there's not that much air inside a massive snake. You need to conserve oxygen. Finally, you pull out your waterproof flashlight. It still works. Looks like a tiny red room. No doors, no windows. Then it hits you. Your phone. You can just reach it. The screen's cracked, but it still works. But you've only got 4% battery. And there's no signal. You think about the signal flare strapped to your ankle, the ones you use to light up a dark cave and stuff, but you can't reach it. You put all your strength into bending your knees, but you just can't. Suddenly, you notice that you've stopped moving. Snakes like to crawl to a safe resting place after eating a large meal. That's when it starts releasing more enzymes to help it digest its prize. You've got one shot to reach the flare. You need to relax your whole body. You stop moving and start to breathe slowly. You feel the walls around you start to relax too. You have 1 second to bend down and reach for the flare. You go for it. Your hand slides down your leg, past the knee, almost there. You reach your ankle, but there's nothing there. It must have come loose while you were running through the rainforest. A few hours pass. You're well inside Titanoboa's stomach. Snakes have powerful enzymes that can digest all parts of an animal, so it wouldn't have problems dealing with clothes and shoes. You feel around with your hands. Maybe you can find something to help you. A bone from a previous meal? Anything. Your fingers graze over something, a hard, round object. You manage to get the flashlight on it. No way! It's the royal medallion you've been hunting for. This titanoboa must be way older than you thought. It must have had a tasty pirate snack about 300 years ago. How did this snake survive so long? Good diet? Plenty of exercise? There's no chance of escape. You decide to write a final message on your phone. Maybe someone will find it after this whole thing is over. You write that you love your family and have lived a happy life full of adventures. You start to cry, not out of sadness, well, a little bit, but mostly because the enzymes are stinging your eyes. It's done. You put your phone back in your pocket and clutch the medallion tight. You found it! How awesome are you right now? You close your eyes and start feeling kinda sleepy. Then, your phone buzzes. Someone sent you a text. That means you finally got a signal. You call for help and tell them you've been swallowed by a huge snake. You're saved! But they don't believe you and hang up. Just another prankster. You call back, but your battery's done for. A moment later, the snake begins to move again. You hear strange noises coming from outside. What's going on? You can feel the snake's muscles tense up, like it's getting ready to make a dash for it. A few seconds pass, and then the snake suddenly relaxes. You hear human voices. You try to shout, but you're inside a snake. So like, wham! A human hand grabs your head. Another hand grabs you by the shoulder and starts to pull. Someone came for you. You pass through the throat, and after a couple of minutes, the darkness disappears and sunlight hits your eyes. You're saved. Why did you run away from us? We were trying to warn you. Whoa, that guy looks real familiar. Oh, it's that guy who was chasing you earlier. Turns out he wasn't a poacher. He was a local guide. Apparently, locals are always pulling lost tourists out of Titanoboa's stomach. They usually just give the snake something to make it sleepy, then pull, pull, pull. You hug your saviors and thank them for their help. You're never going back to that rainforest, that's for sure. A smile spreads over your face, and you reach into your pocket to feel that sweet gold medallion. No! It must have fallen out! That means it's still stuck in the snake's stomach. You look at the rescuers and ask, "You mind if I pop back in there real quick?"
So in the early 2000s, a geology major went on a field trip to the world's largest open-pit coal mine in Colombia. He picked up a piece of rock and noticed impressions of some prehistoric leaves on it. Then he found more rocks, and each of them had the same pattern. Back then, the student could hardly know that his discovery would help describe the largest snake that has ever lived on Earth. The student took his findings to a local scientist who called up the Smithsonian Institute and invited them for a fossil hunt. He wasn't that surprised, as he knew there were fossils in the pits of Sarihan. Back in 1990, another geologist found a fossil there and brought it to his office. He wasn't sure of what it was and called it a petrified branch. Years later, a paleontologist saw an image of this branch. He knew it wasn't a branch at all, but a fossilized jawbone of an animal. The scientist got so excited about the find that he flew all the way to Colombia. He wanted to examine the fossil, but no one had the key to its glass display case. The scientists couldn't wait, so they broke the glass and confirmed that it was a fossil of an animal that lived millions of years ago. After Herrera's finding, they knew exactly there were more fossils in the area. It took the team of scientists about 2 years to figure out they were all a part of a giant snake and not a crocodile, as they thought because of the size. They managed to establish it by looking at the vertebrae and ribs of around 30 giant snakes. Now you might think that fossils would get easily destroyed in an open-pit coal mine, but in fact, they were found under the coal that served as a protective layer for them. Sadly, the scientists couldn't find the Titanoboa's skull. Unlike jaws, which are extremely powerful thanks to their muscles, snake bones are pretty fragile. That's why they usually crumble long before the sediment can appear over them. But still, the researchers managed to find 3 skull fragments. Thanks to this discovery, they've made a full-scale replica of the snake's head, which supported the theory that it used to be one of the largest predators of its time. If you're starting to freak out, don't worry, so am I. They also established it was related to modern boas and anacondas. That's how titanoboa got its name. It's basically a titanic boa. The huge snake was officially described in 2009. Titanoboa was thriving around 60 million years ago, 6 million years after the Tyrannosaurus rex roamed the planet. Back then, it enjoyed the climate of the area in South America, which is now Colombia and Peru. It got almost as long as a bowling lane, 50 feet, or twice as long as the biggest snake living today. It was as heavy as 4 giant anacondas. It got this long and this heavy thanks to a lucky coincidence. Snakes are cold-blooded animals, so they need a warm climate to live and grow in. Northeastern Colombia was perfect. It was about 90 degrees Fahrenheit when Titanoboa was alive. Titanoboa wasn't that fast, especially on land, but it most likely spent much time in or near the water. Our hero could swim at a speed of up to 12 miles per hour. Like present-day snakes, it could wriggle around and change direction really quickly. Scientists still aren't sure if it could climb trees. Paleontologists believe that Titanoboa had brownish or grayish skin. It was the perfect color for the serpent to hide in the muddy rivers of the tropical rainforests. But then again, I don't see why it would have to hide from anyone, given its size. The largest snake ever wasn't venomous, but it didn't stop it from hunting any animal it wanted. And although it could choose pretty much anything, its favorite meal was most likely fish. Whew. Scientists decided so based on the snake's palate and the number and type of its teeth. You can't recreate the giant's diet today, as all of those fish types are also extinct. When it wanted to spice up its menu, Titanoboa dined on other reptiles. It sneaked up on its prey and got them down with one quick strike. Its bite had a very special design. The structure of its jaws let Titanoboa clamp down on the body of its prey, so there was no escape. Titanoboa also had a mean set of thin and pointed teeth. They bent inwards in the snake's jaw like fishing hooks. This little feature helped Titanoboa get a grip on its prey and prevent the slightest chance of its running or swimming away. It could most likely easily swallow even large turtles and crocodiles. Now, all that sounds pretty scary, but we have nothing to worry about as Titanoboas are long extinct, right? Well, technically, as the temperatures on Earth are going up, it's quite possible that snakes might also grow in size. They love heat more than anything, so they should feel comfortable here. Of course, that would be a completely different snake, but it's not impossible that we'll see something similar to Titanoboa. But before you think of escaping to another planet, remember that huge snakes would need something huge to eat. Such giants prefer to wrap around something huge and swallow it. Most people would be simply too small for them. So unless the huge snake was starving, I don't think it'd waste its energy on attacking anything too little. Plus, like any other snake, Titanoboa had a sharp and delicate sense of smell, needing exceptional conditions and was sensitive to vibrations. A little too smelly, too noisy, too cold, too dry, or too wet, and the snake wouldn't go near this place unless absolutely desperate. So, if you live in a big city, your chances of meeting a huge snake like Titanoboa are about zero. Rural areas are something different, but the only place where the giant serpent would consider living would be near the equator. We already have some pretty giant snakes in the warmest regions of the world. Amethystine python, or less poetically, scrub python, is a gentle giant. It's the largest snake in Papua New Guinea and Australia. It can grow to the enormous size of 28 feet and weigh up to 77 pounds, which is about as heavy as a Dalmatian. Scrub pythons are pretty curious, sometimes slithering inside people's homes in Australia, but they're mostly harmless to humans. Their favorite food is rodents, bats, and birds that come to streams for water. Until then, pythons quietly lie in wait. They have heat sensors in the pit of their muzzles. They help the pythons better see warm-blooded animals they can have for dinner. The African rock python is one of only 11 living species of its kind. It's currently the second largest snake on the planet. This huge brown snake reaches lengths up to 20 feet and weighs about half as much as the giant panda. It's very serious about its meals, as it can catch an antelope and eat it whole. Even the cold-blooded crocodiles are afraid of this beast because it can easily eat one of their kind too. In 1958, a zoologist found a 4-foot-long young Nile crocodile inside an African python's stomach. According to the scientist, the python said, "Well, I don't know about you, but I find this whole thing hard to swallow." Actually, that's not true. Pythons can't talk, as far as we know. The reticulated python holds the record as the longest of all the living snakes in the world. The largest of these guys made it into the Guinness World Records in 2011 with a length of 25.2 feet. Its name is Medusa, and it lives in a zoo in Kansas City, Missouri. An adult reticulated python is large enough to swallow a human whole, or a whole human, either way. But these snakes are mostly quite peaceful and prefer to lie down without much movement. Although many pythons have dwarf forms that are much smaller than their full-grown cousins, reticulated pythons also have super dwarf forms. You can keep one of those as an 8-foot-long pet. Yes, it's considered a dwarf form, although it's longer than the average human is tall. You know, somehow I still don't find that comforting.
You wake up in the middle of the night to a phone buzz. You know what time it is, you ask sleepily. But then, you sit up in a jolt.
"Get your stuff and go outside. They'll come fetch you in 10 minutes.
Says a male voice on the other end. You step out of your house and watch as a small helicopter descends on your lawn. You get inside and meet a scientist there. She's a specialist in archaeology and paleontology. As the helicopter takes off, she tells you that something terrible happened on one of the islands in South America, and you're flying directly there, right now. The whole operation is secret, so you're asked to give up your mobile phone. The helicopter flies far beyond the night city and lands at the airport. From there, you transfer to a plane and fly to the coast of South America. You land on a small island, and a guide ushers you to a jeep waiting nearby. For several hours, you and other scientists drive through the hot jungle. The road ends, and you continue your journey along a narrow path. You notice that the further you go, the quieter it gets. The birds don't sing, not even the leaves on the trees rustle. The jungle finally ends, and you find yourself on the coast. There are many tents with scientific equipment, people, and cars. Several people in black suits lead you toward some fallen trees. You end up in the middle of a large trench that leads to the ocean. The trench begins in the forest, right at the fallen trees. Judging by its size, a train could have passed here, but the truth is much scarier. After some research, you tell people the creature that left such a trace became extinct about 60 million years ago. The creature that uprooted so many trees is the largest snake that ever lived on Earth. You and the others must find out how this reptile managed to survive, and where it is now. Titanoboa usually lived in tropical forests near swamps. Apparently, the island is its home, but now something has forced the snake to crawl away into the ocean. You carefully examine the trench, then the fallen trees, and declare the snake was not alone. It was fighting something as big as itself. Everyone looks at you in shock, and the next moment, a deafening roar comes from the water, breaking the ocean's surface like a monstrous dolphin. A mosasaurus emerges from the deep, a huge reptile that lived from 145 to 65 million years ago in almost all waters of the world. It looks a lot like a crocodile, has smooth, dark scales, a fin at the end of its tail, and flippers instead of legs. It measures 55 feet long, which is about the size of a 5-story building, and weighs like half a subway car. And this huge dinosaur is coursing the waters near the shore right now, in front of you. With its large fins, it creates waves that wash away several tents on the shore. People on the island scatter away in all directions. Several ships and yachts are capsized. People on lifeboats are hurrying to the shore. Mosasaurus was one of the most formidable predators, not only in the sea, but also on land during the Cretaceous period. No creature dared to attack this monster, so their population spread all over the world. It wasn't used to feeling like prey, but now it seems the dinosaur has met a worthy opponent. The Mosasaurus dives back into the water as if running away from something. A few hundred feet away, you notice a long, smooth body of the titanoboa. It's stretched out to full length and is swimming after the mosasaurus. The snake is 42 feet long. This is 1.5 times more than a rail car. The biggest snake on the planet comes to grips with the scariest underwater dinosaur, and you're standing witness. The titanoboa wraps itself around the sea predator and drags it to the shore. With its flippers and fins adapted to the sea, the great dino will be at a disadvantage on land, but it has lungs, not gills. It needs air to breathe, so the fight continues. Both the snake and the lizard end up on the shore. You're watching them from behind the trees nearby. The snake squeezes its opponent hard and is winning, but the mosasaurus manages to push the titanoboa's head to the sand with its flipper. The snake lets the enemy go, and the mosasaurus crawls back into the water because it's faster and more agile there than the snake. The titanoboa slithers after its rival. The fight goes on underwater. The mosasaurus manages to swim away from the shore and hide among the reefs and algae. Thanks to its dark scales, it's almost invisible there. The snake swims past, and the mosasaurus jumps it from behind. Its powerful jaws are opening wide like a snake's. It clings to the opponent. The titanoboa immediately reacts and wraps itself around the dinosaur. It bites the fin tail with its giant fangs. The two colossal animals are in a clinch now and don't know what to do next. The compressive force of the snake's grip is like the weight of the entire Brooklyn Bridge pressed onto a passenger car. The mosasaurus is trapped, and it starts kicking and swinging its flippers. It begins to turn around its axis, wrapped by the snake. The rotation of two giant reptiles in the sea creates a huge funnel in the water. Whole schools of fish swimming around get trapped in there. The titanoboa becomes dizzy from this merry-go-round. It loses concentration and opens its jaws. The lizard uses all its strength to break free, and the snake swims away from it. Now the dinosaur is chasing its opponent. The titanoboa emerges from the water, not far from the shore. Helicopters fly around the island, recording the events. Yachts and small fishing boats sail to the site of the Battle of the Titans. The titanoboa crawls out of the water and is about to disappear into the jungle, but the mosasaurus grabs it at the last moment. There are 2 rows of teeth in its upper jaw. One of them is located closer to the pharynx. This row allows the dinosaur to hold its prey, while the prey resists. The duel continues on land. The trees around the 2 monsters shatter into splinters. The titanoboa wraps itself around the enemy, opens its huge mouth, grabs the dinosaur's tail, and begins to slowly swallow it. The mosasaurus realizes the great snake's strategy and begins to thrash around. The snake blocks its movements, so the dino digs into the sandy beach. After a short while, a large pit appears beneath the monsters. The sand gets into the snake's eyes, and it lets go of the opponent. The mosasaurus is again slowly crawling towards the water, and the titanoboa is in no hurry to catch it. You can see the reptiles are tired. The mosasaurus swims away from the shore and stares at the snake. From the shore, it looks like an enormous log. 2 eyes the size of a football gaze intently at the snake. The titanoboa lies in the sand and breathes heavily. Then, it stretches to its full length and looks back at the mosasaurus. The snake's long body slowly bends, its muscles tense. The reptile is preparing to lunge. The dinosaur is slowly heading toward the shore. It growls and paddles with its flippers. Like a seal, it squelches through the shallow water towards the titanoboa. The snake uncoils like a spring towards the enemy. At great speed, 2 predators collide with their heads. The hit is so strong, they lose their bearings and move away from each other. Now, each of them feels like a loser. The dinosaur slowly paddles into the water, and the snake returns to the jungle. The monsters are tired of fighting. There's no winner. You and the rest of the people stand with your mouths open in complete silence. You look around the island and notice trees with broken branches everywhere. In the depths of the island, you find a waterfall and huge wet stones. There are large scratches on many of them. Somehow, millions of years ago, lots of ancient reptiles managed to survive global disasters on this island. And now, there are only 2 left. You conclude that the mosasaurus and the titanoboa have been fighting each other for years. Soon, these reptiles will gain strength again, and continue their eternal struggle. You decide to leave the island before that happens.
This black, ominous-looking snake won't hurt you. It's got no fangs. You may have mistakenly thought that this black critter is none other than a black mamba, but it's just a harmless rat snake. There's one main sign that can help you figure out if a snake is really dangerous. Unfanged species do not have a venom delivery system, therefore, their bites won't harm you that much. But if you see a snake with fangs, you're in real danger. If you come across a snake, it's best to leave the area and seek assistance from a wildlife professional in identifying the reptile. Here are some tips to help you distinguish between the two types. Observe their behavior, nesting habits, and habitats. Some snakes may shake their tails as a warning signal. Also, venomous snakes typically have triangular-shaped heads, compared to non-venomous snakes with rounded heads. Time for an optical illusion. Can you spot a snake here? You'd better be attentive because there's a boomslang hiding on that tree. This slithery critter has mastered the art of disguise, and it likes to pretend to be a tree branch. Also, boomslangs may not have the best sense of smell, but they make up for it with their ability to detect chemicals in the air. Using their tongues, they gather odor molecules and press them against their sensory organs in the mouth. This snake is venomous. Just look at those fangs. Still, while they're not in use, the snake can neatly fold back its fangs into its mouth. Rattlesnakes and humans have something in common. Both have a lot of keratin-made accessories in our bodies. Human nails and hair are made of keratin, and rattlesnakes' rattles are made of it too. The staple sounds these slithery creatures make are similar to the noise we humans can make when we rub our nails against one another. But these reptiles do it super fast, so it almost sounds like hissing. Whenever the snakes shed, they add up a new segment to their rattle. But it's not like the older a snake is, the more segments it has. Their rattles may wear off or break, just like our nails. Rattlesnakes, as well as many other snakes, have a unique inner ear structure that doesn't include an eardrum. This means they can't pick up airborne sounds like we do. Instead, their inner ear is connected to their jaw, and they use this mechanism to feel vibrations. Biologists are still figuring out whether snakes detect sounds through pressure or mechanical vibrations in their bodies. They're also quite selective eaters. Rattlesnakes only chow down when they're feeling hungry, with adults usually waiting around 2 weeks between meals. These sneaky hunters usually go after mice, rats, squirrels, and rabbits, but they won't say no to a bird if they manage to catch one. Younger rattlesnakes, on the other hand, tend to have a heartier appetite, sometimes dining as often as once a week. Now look at their huge fangs. They're like hypodermic needles, hollow and sharp, allowing them to inject venom. What's really cool is that these fangs are hinged and lie flat against the snake's upper jaw when its mouth is closed, only to spring forward perpendicularly when it strikes. Majestic cottonmouths are named this way because of the striking white coloration inside their mouths that they display when threatened. These semi-aquatic serpents effortlessly navigate both water and land, earning them the moniker water moccasin. Equipped with heat-sensing facial pits nestled between their eyes and nostrils, they possess an extraordinary ability to detect even the slightest temperature variations, honing in on potential prey with precision. Rarely do cottonmouths bite humans, reserving their venomous strike for moments of provocation. Here's a tip on how to distinguish between non-venomous water snakes and their venomous counterparts, cottonmouths. While water snakes boast a slender build, cottonmouths exude a robust and weighty presence. The telltale signs continue with water snakes sporting elongated, slender tails and heads proportionate to their necks, contrasting with the blocky and broad head of a cottonmouth. The pupils of the water snake are round, a departure from the vertical, cat-like pupils of cottonmouths. Plus, non-venomous snakes don't have the distinctive facial pits characteristic of pit vipers, like cottonmouths. Here's another venomous star, the copperhead snake. Their musk smells just like cucumbers. Their venom is pretty particular too. Will you be in trouble if this snake bites you? Totally. Does it help cure lethal conditions? Sorta. It's not 100% proven fact so far, but scientists have been testing this theory for quite a while. And they did notice that the copperhead snake's venom can, if not cure some serious conditions, but slow down their progression. Even so, they have the most venomous bites among all the US snakes, but antivenom for the bites somehow is not always needed. Coral snakes are known for their non-aggressive nature, as they are shy and secretive creatures. Theirs make up less than 1% of snake bites in America. Their venom is a neurotoxin that paralyzes nerves, and due to their small teeth, they must chew on their prey to inject the venom. When feeling threatened, a coral snake will curl the tip of its tail to confuse the attacker about the location of its head. The mysterious and mesmerizing black mamba, also known as the black-mouthed mamba, calls the rocky savanna its home and loves to hang out near termite mounds. With a color range from gray to dark brown, its name comes from the dark interior of its mouth. Black mambas hold the title of some of the fastest-moving snakes globally, reaching speeds of 10 to 12 miles per hour on a sleek surface. Despite its fierce reputation, unprovoked attacks on humans remain unproven, and the snake is actually responsible for only a small number of lethal cases each year. Saw-scaled vipers possess a fascinating ability to produce a spine-chilling noise, accompanied by a striking threat display. The unique shape of their scales allows them to create a prolonged rattling hiss or sizzle when they move in a particular terrifying manner. These sounds serve as a clear warning to anyone in close proximity to the snake. Despite being responsible for many fatalities, without treatment, the saw-scaled viper's bites are fatal in fewer than 10% of cases. This contrasts starkly with the king cobra and black mamba, whose untreated bite fatalities are significantly higher. Saw-scaled vipers are known for their extreme aggression and lightning-fast strikes, making them some of the quickest and most unpredictable snakes in the world. When you're out hiking in the bush, remember not to mess with any snakes you come across, even if they don't seem alive. Some sneaky snakes play possum and can strike if bothered. If you spot one, give it some space. When it comes to snakes, they're usually pretty shy and won't bother you unless they feel threatened. Trying to catch or harm a snake is a big no-no, as that's when most snake bites occur. And don't be tricked by their size. Even little snakes can pack a punch. For example, baby brown snakes are born with venom, so it's best to admire them from a safe distance. Each year, over 7,000 Americans fall victim to snake bites, often due to misguided attempts to handle or fight a snake. It's crucial to avoid such actions and seek immediately medical help if bitten. Understanding how to differentiate between venomous and non-venomous snakes is key to assessing potential risks. Contact a professional if you're unsure about a snake's identity, and never handle a snake, even if it appears harmless.
Hello, and welcome to the Survive No Matter What show. Today, our host, Alberto, will perform a crazy trick. Last year, he lived in a cave with a grizzly bear for 2 months and managed to survive. Do you remember how Alberto smeared himself with minced meat and jumped into a pool with piranhas? I hope you haven't forgotten how Alberto grilled a barbecue on an awakened volcano. Well, forget it. Today, Alberto will do the most dangerous and crazy trick in his life. Especially for you, dear viewers, he will get swallowed by a giant blue whale. Alberto goes to the North Atlantic. It's a vast area of water where you can meet blue whales and cachalots. He gets on a yacht and sails far from the shore. He's going to look for whales using echolocation and binoculars. A few days have passed. Alberto sits on board and studies the horizon. The sonar detects some movement. He looks toward the signal and sees a water fountain rising into the sky. It's a giant blue whale, the largest mammal on the planet. Yes, it's a mammal, not a fish. So, Alberto smears himself with oil to easily squeeze into the whale's throat. He takes an oxygen mask and jumps into the water. The blue whale opens its mouth and absorbs a massive amount of water. Its mouth is filled with whalebone. These are the bristles that replace teeth. They consist of keratin protein. People's hair and nails are made of it. The whale draws in water and then pushes it out. The bristles prevent small fish and plankton from leaving the mouth along with the liquid. Whalebone is like a filter. Alberto swims closer. The whale takes a sip. It absorbs several dozen gallons of water and sucks up Alberto. Our hero is inside the storm. The water splashes in different directions, and a giant tongue, the size of an elephant, throws Alberto on different sides. Alberto tries to get to the throat, but the water splashes back out. Alberto slides along the tongue to the mouth's exit, but the whale closes his mouth, and he crashes into the whalebone. It's a little painful. A couple of bristles even fall off. The tongue wants to push him out, but Alberto manages to squeeze into its throat. But here, he meets a block. He can't go further because of the structure of the whale. This colossal animal's throat is tiny, the size of a fist, but it can stretch. Alberto had foreseen this. That's why he smeared himself with oil. He stretches out to his full height and jumps into the throat. Now our hero finds himself inside a narrow esophagus. He slides on it like a slide in a water park. Then his speed decreases. The space becomes narrower. Now Alberto is crawling forward with difficulty. It's very slippery here, and Alberto can barely move. The esophagus contracts and pushes Alberto further. Now he's inside the stomach. It's dark, cramped, and smells awful. Alberto wants to light a match, but his pockets are entirely wet. And it's a bad idea to make a fire here. Firstly, there's almost no oxygen, which means no chance for a fire. Secondly, various chemical reactions occur inside the stomach, creating explosive gases. Alberto doesn't want that. He takes out a flashlight and examines the place. The walls of the stomach are narrow and constantly pulsating. Alberto can't stand up to his full height. He's knee-deep in some liquid. He sees skeletons of fish, shipwrecks, supermarket baskets, DVDs, a lamp, and a Moby Dick book around him. No, that's not true, as you're unlikely to find anything interesting inside a whale's stomach. Maybe a plastic bottle or some small squid. By the way, a cachalot, unlike a blue whale, has a wide and long throat. This allows it to swallow large prey whole. Technically, it can swallow a human with one sip. Anyway, you can find many exciting things in the cachalot's stomach. Once, this creature swallowed a giant squid whole. The length of these squids can reach 46 feet. That's the size of a small bus. But the cachalot managed to swallow such prey thanks to the flexible structure of the squid's body. Okay, now let's get back to Alberto. There's a terrible smell in the whale's stomach. Plankton and small fish are digested in gastric juice. And, wait, why does it hurt so much? Alberto feels the stomach juice splitting his suit. Alberto tries to get up, but it's too crowded in here. He hits the stomach walls with his hands, but nothing happens. The stomach narrows and squeezes Alberto more and more. The juice irritates his skin. Alberto shouts and waves his legs in different directions. He wants to cause a gag reflex, but it doesn't work. Alberto is desperate, and he doesn't know what to do. It seems that this is his last adventure. He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. Stop. A deep breath. Precisely! Alberto opens the oxygen tank and fills the stomach with fresh air. Now the whale begins to bloat and is filled with gas. The stomach is throbbing, the juice is foaming, and it seems a storm is coming. The walls contract so much that they squeeze Alberto out through the esophagus. Together with the remains of fish and juice, he moves forward. The esophagus is getting narrower. Alberto finds it hard to breathe, but he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. The whale spits him out. Alberto is alive. He's happy that he managed to escape such an adventure unharmed. He returns to the boat and sails to the shore. But wait a minute. What's that swimming by right now? It's a cachalot. What a stroke of luck. Alberto dives into the water again. He's heading straight for the mouth of this huge animal. The cachalot absorbs water. Several fish and an octopus get there along with Alberto. The cachalot pushes him with its tongue in different directions and swallows all the prey. The throat is wide enough, and Alberto easily manages to get there. But there's another problem. Alberto is already in a very tight esophagus where he can hardly breathe. And he doesn't have an oxygen tank. Alberto feels like he's been wrapped tightly in duct tape. He can't do anything, and there's no air here. He squeezes deep into the esophagus and feels that he is not alone here. In addition to the octopus, he feels the movements of large tentacles. Wow! It's a giant squid! And it seems it's still alive. Alberto shakes his whole body, but can't change anything. He loses consciousness. The stomach walls are pressing on his face. At this point, Alberto bites it. An earthquake begins. All that lay in the stomach comes out. Finally, Alberto is outside. A colossal squid swims away as far as possible. It seems it hasn't understood what happened to it. Our hero climbs onto the yacht. He's the happiest person on the planet right now. He starts the engine and heads to the shore. You must understand that Alberto's story is purely hypothetical. Of course, in reality, a whale wouldn't be able to swallow a human. Reports that a person ended up in a whale's stomach are overgrown with myths and legends. Yes, there were cases when people got into their giant mouths, but they didn't go through the throat. One day a diver got there, but he miraculously survived thanks to scuba diving equipment that helped him breathe. Another case occurred with people who were kayaking. When a humpback whale catches fish, it swims up to the surface with its mouth open. It's like a grid that rises from below. Those guys on the kayaks were too close and fell into the whale's mouth. Anyway, don't worry, a whale can't swallow you. It's impossible. But it is possible for a cachalot. The good news is that this is a rare animal. The probability of getting into its stomach is 1 in a billion. It's more likely that a meteorite will fall near you. Most people on Earth will never see a cachalot in real life. These animals swim worldwide in open oceans, but spend most of their time at a depth of about 10,000 feet. That's 10 times the height of the Eiffel Tower, but just in the ocean.
And now for some breaking news. All snakes have suddenly disappeared.
If you saw this on the news, what do you think would happen? Well, Voldemort certainly wouldn't be pleased to hear this, and neither would other Slytherin members. Hogwarts would have 3 houses instead of 4. Parseltongue, which is the language of serpents, would become useless. Okay, Potterheads, let's get back to our Muggle world. How would it affect us? Well, let's look at the bright side first. People with ophidiophobia, which is the fear of snakes, would be so relieved. We can all agree that snakes aren't exactly everyone's favorite animal. Some snakes are venomous, and this doesn't help save their reputation. It's often overlooked that these animals usually prefer to retreat when you encounter them. They can become defensive if threatened, but when left alone, they don't want to mess with you. Try telling this to people with a phobia, though. Now they can enjoy outdoor activities, such as mountain climbing, like everyone else. And yet, they would have other worries in the absence of these serpents. The design of the ecosystem works like a clock. Every species has an important role. If one goes down, the others will be affected. Snakes are no exception to this order. They primarily snack on mice or rats. They help to control rodent and other small mammal populations. This is important in terms of preventing the spread of diseases, too. Think about the spread of the plague of medieval times. Driving out all reptiles could cause a similar problem. Did you know that the bubonic plague was never completely gone? It's been spotted in modern times too. For instance, in Madagascar in 2008. So it's good to have some snakes around to protect us from disease outbreaks. You see, snakes are excellent hunters. They ambush their prey by using their highly developed senses to find and track their potential dinner. They're super mobile, can squeeze through cracks, climb on rock walls, and swim. They can even fly. Well, sort of. Flying snakes can't actually gain altitude, but they can glide. They use the speed of free fall and contortions of their bodies to follow airflows and lift themselves. Yeah, they can catch their prey in numerous ways. If we imagine a world without them, it will lead us to another phobia. Allow me to introduce you to mussophobia. It's the fear of mice and rats. People with this phobia will have a hard time with all those rats wandering around, since there are no snakes to eat them. Not to mention that a single pair of rats can have 1 million descendants in over a year. Say hello to crop damage. An overpopulation of rodents can lead to a shortage of food and competition for resources. Do I feel the Hunger Games vibes? Oh, and mice wouldn't be our only problem. You can add insects to the list too. Again, without snakes, they'll throw a party in the streets. Reptiles also play an important role in the natural environment and food webs as prey. Mongooses, eagles, and hawks would really miss snakes. Eventually, some populations of large mammals would decline, and this could lead to the extinction of some species. Then there's medicine. Scientists and researchers would miss these creatures. Snake venom is the key to the development of certain medicines. For example, some diabetes and heart disease medicines have been derived from snake venom. Patients who need them will get affected too. When we mention snakes and medicine, there's something else that comes to mind. Botox. Is it really snake venom? Nope. Snake venom used in skincare isn't obtained from the animal itself. It turns out that this ingredient is called snake. It's a human-made ingredient designed to mimic the effects of temple viper snake venom. Now let's picture what life would really look like without snakes. I'm starting with day 1. People don't immediately notice the absence of these creatures. So, in the first few days, especially in cities, people would have no clue that all snakes are gone. Workers in zoos could start to panic. You would see some news about snakes missing from zoos. Then people in zoo administrations would go through CCTV footage. They would be shocked to see that snakes disappeared into thin air. After the spread of this news, authorities would probably open special departments to see if they have any snakes left in their country. Then it would turn into a worldwide issue. Some sort of a global alliance would be established to investigate what happened to these reptiles and what could be done about it. By the time authorities and people understood the severity of the situation, ecosystems would already start to change. People who live in urban environments may not be directly affected in the first few months. Then they would see more mice in their houses and in the streets. Around 500,000 mice live in the network of tunnels of the London Underground, for example. The number may vary, but many rodents live in large cities. These animals would become more visible. You'd open a kitchen cabinet and, oops, you'd see a mouse looking at you from behind a jar of peanut butter. New career opportunities would arise, since the demand to live in a mouse-free environment would skyrocket. Authorities might introduce new taxes to raise money to handle this new situation. After all, they would need to provide people with safe places to live. Of course, it would be not only urban places that would be affected by the absence of snakes. The countryside would have even more problems. Without snakes, the number of pests would increase. These animals would start destroying crops and habitats of other animals, and farmers would be in serious trouble. Authorities would need to support people living there and find ways to protect the environment, which would be their top priority. Researchers and scientists would have to take a huge responsibility. Maybe they'd create artificial snakes that could be nutritious like real snakes, so that animals like eagles would hunt them and continue to live. What artificial snakes would look like is a mystery. I can't imagine them. I'll just leave it to you. If we flashed forward to 5 years from the first day of the world without snakes, we would face an entirely different world. Maybe we would have a special day for it, the 5th anniversary of the world without snakes. The changes would be obvious, but by that time, people would have probably got used to living in that different world. Some restaurants would have already made changes to their menus. Goodbye to snake soup. Then there would be new museums dedicated to snakes. You'd be able to read about the story of their evolution and see their fossils. Maybe you'd stop by the museum souvenir shop to buy a snake-shaped pen for your friend. Lastly, we would still be looking for alternatives to snake venom in the field of medicine. I mean, it's a relief for people who show allergic reactions to snake bites, but these animals are crucial for some studies and medicines. So, researchers would still be busy trying to find alternatives that could replace snake venom. If we went 200 years ahead in time, we would see a world where people have fully accepted that snakes are gone for good. So much so that younger people would only know that there was an animal named a snake that once lived on this planet. They would get to know this animal from history books and videos. Coloring books would have a cat or a dog, but not a snake. Mythical creatures like Medusa and Shamaran would become even more mystical and interesting. Oh, and we wouldn't compare a sneaky person to a snake anymore. There would be a new definition for them. We've survived the Ice Age, meteorites, and many other challenges, so we'll probably figure something out. Fingers crossed that this scenario never gets real, though. Do you have any other version of how events could unfold in a snakeless world?
Snakes, crocodiles, big lizards. Not exactly a big deal. I mean, I guess they're less scary and Whoa, I take it back. Crocodile monitors are the only reptiles, other than snakes of course, that have forked tongues. No, we're not counting telemarketers. Somehow, that tongue helps them pick up delicious scents. Oh, and they're also called tree crocodiles. So, if you ever thought you'd be safe up in a tree if you got chased by a crocodile, better think again. They're full of surprises, including impressive tree climbing skills. They're quite aggressive, and luckily, they live far, far away, somewhere in the mountains of New Guinea. It may not be the giant dragon you saw in that fantasy movie last week, but the Komodo dragon is scary in its own way. The biggest living lizard even has its own island named after it. If you're ever in Indonesia, 300 pounds, 10 feet long, definitely worth a look, from a distance. This lizard tends to dig a huge hole where it lays its eggs. As soon as the younger ones gain some strength, they run away from home and climb up the nearest tree. Not because they're being rebellious, more to avoid being eaten. Yep, they don't have the best parents in the world since, well, Komodo dragons sometimes eat other Komodo dragons. So, yeah. This turtle is all about breaking stereotypes. It looks like a dinosaur tried to crash the annual turtle Halloween party. A ridged shell, rough skin, and an insanely strong bite. Definitely not your average turtle. They live in swamps and freshwater lakes, and are definitely the largest and meanest looking of all snapping turtles out there. They're also the heaviest. The biggest one ever found weighed almost 250 pounds. Because of the algae growing on their shells, you might think you're looking at some sort of oddly shaped rock sticking out of the water. Finally, a scary movie starring a turtle as a bad guy. They walk at night and will literally eat everything they find. I'm talking snakes, opossums, water birds, squirrels, other turtles, and this is the impressive part, even some smaller alligators. I don't know if I'm ever going to swim in a lake again. Snake time, beady little eyes, crazy colored skin. Yeah, that's not the case with the Madagascar blind snake. These small reptiles look like skinny pink worms, and you're not exactly going to stumble across them in the wild. They live underground, and yes, they have really poor vision. They can only see blurry shapes and shadows. That's why they mainly hunt by smell. Blind snakes in general can grow up to a foot long, and they live on all continents except Antarctica. And speaking of snakes, I just can't leave out the cobra. Yellow, black, striped, so many patterns and colors, but there's one, you better hope you never meet her, the queen, the red spitting cobra. This one won't bite you to inject its venom. It's got a bit more of a rude approach. It contracts the muscles around its venom gland and spits some out right into your face. It seems like a way scarier tactic than a regular old bite, but there's a catch. This cobra's venom doesn't work if it falls on your skin or even gets into your mouth. For things to get really nasty, it has to get into your eyes. Phew! I mean, it's not like animals have such an amazing aim that they can nail you in the eye while you're running away, right? Well, there was an experiment, and those spitting cobras managed to hit a researcher's goggle-covered eyes 10 out of 10 times. Speaking of snakes, no wait, speaking of turtles, okay, snake-necked turtles, I got it eventually. When you see one roaming around, you might think it's a snake that's borrowing its buddy's house while it's out of town. But no, this turtle's neck is almost half its total size. How awesome would we look with necks like that? No thanks. They mostly chill in wetlands or swamps. Some of them are also known as stinkers, like me. And you can find out why if you catch one having a bad day. They can launch their stinky spray more than 3 feet. Well, that beats me. Pac-Man frogs, named after the greatest game ever, according to that weird guy you met at the grocery store, have round plum bodies with pretty big stomachs and mouths. They come in different colors, including apricot, strawberry, and albino. So red, yellow, and white, I guess. They're pretty lazy and not into climbing or even moving. They do have teeth though, and they won't hesitate to bite if you touch them. Luckily, they're not poisonous, but it probably wouldn't feel that good to have a frog hanging from your finger. No, I guess it wouldn't. This is a gharial, one of the strangest and most unique crocodiles out there. Check out that ridiculous snout. But it does come in handy when it's trying to catch fish. Unlike crocodiles that stalk and then lunge at their prey, gharials sense vibrations in the water. Then they whip their heads from side to side, then it's sushi time. Their jaws have more than 100 teeth. Gharials prefer to stay in the water most of the time, but sometimes they go out to chill if it's sunny enough. Just give them a clear freshwater river and they'll be happy. Yeah, no need to tell me twice. Lizards, snakes, frogs, step aside please, turtles are slowly but surely taking over this video. Strap yourselves in for the pig-nosed turtle. It's another freshwater turtle, this time with a long snout, complete with 2 big nostrils. It gets its name because, duh. That sweet snout allows it to breathe while the rest of its body stays underwater. That way, it can keep its body hidden. It's safe from any underwater danger, too, since its belly looks sort of like the reflections made by nearby trees. It may look funny, but this turtle's had its own camouflage tactics and totally unique look for the last 140 million years. That's way before the dinosaurs went extinct. The leaf-nosed snake has a quite elongated body and a bizarre nose that looks kind of like a bendy leaf. Okay, so this Pinocchio snake comes from Madagascar and lives in trees, and you might easily mistake it for a branch. This snake chills during the day and goes out at night to find itself some delicious smaller reptiles, frogs, and even birds. Picture yourself on a sandy tropical beach. The sea, coconuts, palms, and iguanas? Yeah, these guys hang out everywhere, in the sand, up trees, on walls. They live all the way from Mexico to Brazil, and love to chill anywhere sunny. It's not just a relaxing hobby, they need the sunlight for its vitamin D, which helps them absorb more nutrients from their food. And no worries, iguanas aren't dangerous, as long as they don't feel threatened. If they do, well, luckily they're not venomous. But they do have sharp teeth that can cause some serious discomfort. Oh, and you know how those smaller lizards lose their tail when they get stuck or when you step on them? The same thing happens to iguanas. A legless lizard is a reptile that's always getting mistaken for a snake. It actually lost its legs and arms, not overnight of course, but through millions of years of evolution. Snakes lost their legs and arms even earlier. Still, there are real differences between them. If you get up close and personal with a legless lizard, you'll see that it blinks. But snakes, on the other hand, they don't even have eyelids. They protect their eyes with see-through membranes. Snakes actually have shorter tails, while legless lizards, well, they're mostly tail. Now you're totally ready for next Monday's quiz night, Reptile Edition. Gotta say it again, turtles are rocking this video. And this time, I mean literally. Mary River turtles look just awesome. It's not like you see a reptile with a green mohawk every day. But this little turtle has a secret. That's not its natural hair. It's actually algae. Ooh, slimy.
It's dark, and you can't see anything. There's slime all over. The ground is soft and moving. You try to find your way around by feeling the moving walls around you. After a while, you hear some painful screams in the distance. You call out for help, but no one responds. You're a captain of a ship, and you are just consumed by the mighty kraken. You keep tumbling over, not knowing if you're even going in the right direction. The screams get louder and louder. It's only a matter of time before you see someone. As you make your next step, a large piece of wood swooshes past you, almost knocking you down. That piece of wood was from the ship that the kraken had swallowed. It had also swallowed the entire crew alive, so they must be somewhere inside the beast's belly. You keep following the screams. They lead you down another path that looks like an esophagus. You grab a piece of wood and slide down the slimy insides. It's dark, so you rip out a piece of cloth from your shirt and wrap it around a large plank, setting it on fire. This makeshift torch allows you to see where you're going in proper detail. You can see the large veins pumping inside. Each vein can fit more than 3 people through it. After a while, you start seeing more debris from your ship, including the treasures you had discovered and kept in the bottom. But now, those huge piles of gold are worthless, since you're out looking for your crewmates in this dark, smelly interior. You reach a point where there seems to be multiple tunnels around, each leading to a different point. You know it's impossible to climb back out from the mouth, so going deeper is the only solution. You decide to go with your gut and slide down the smallest tunnel, which is covered in slime and other liquids. You snuff out your torch and tuck it away to use it again later. You slip through and get stuck for a while. The kraken is still swimming, but seems to be taking a break and stops. The giant veins and blood vessels slow down, and the flesh tunnel that you're crawling through becomes wider. Before you know it, you are plummeting down the large shaft until you reach a liquid pool. The second you splash in it, you start to feel the acid burning through your clothes. You're in one of the kraken's stomachs. You take off your shirt and paddle on a plank, rowing yourself across the acidic lake. You can see more broken pieces of your ship scattered around. Out of nowhere, the kraken springs into action and starts swimming rapidly. You don't have a choice but to hold on to the plank and keep yourself afloat without any acid going into your eyes. You shut them. Now, you're tossed further down the stomach where the digestion is happening. Over here, the acid is even stronger and melts anything that's in it. The smell is atrocious, and you can't find your way to leave. But in the distance, you see some of your crew members stranded in the middle of a small stomach island. You see some sharks still swimming around that haven't been digested yet. There's nothing you can do at the moment but try to get through and make it to your crew members. You get on another piece of wood and row yourself toward them. This time, the stomach acid is melting the wood away. Luckily, someone from your crew tosses you another plank, so you hop onto it and row your way to them. You climb ashore. Everyone is happy to see you. You try to figure out a way out, but the exits are covered in acid. More water seeps in along with plenty of marine animals. The acid levels are rising, and everyone huddles together. After a while, the kraken swallows a large humpback whale that's thrashing around the acidic water. It's making the kraken upset, so it starts moving, tossing everyone around. You, along with many others, land on the whale and hold onto it tight. It seems like the kraken wants to expunge the whale out somehow. The inner walls of the stomach contract until it shrinks enough to let the whale out. You and your crew members are still holding onto the whale, but it's not easy. Finally, the kraken spits out the whale and swims off to the bottom of the ocean. The new challenge is to swim to the surface to breathe. The whale pushes you and everyone else up. Without it, No one would have made it to the surface to catch some oxygen. You don't know where you are. Some of your crewmates grab onto some loose pieces of your ship to stay afloat. You swim to one and climb aboard. The sun is starting to set. There's nothing in sight. The crew is feeling cold and hungry. Worst of all, it's feeding time for the sharks. Everyone climbs up on their planks to stay out of the water. Before you know it, shark fins start to pop up from every corner. There's nothing to do except survive the night. The next day arrives. No one has managed to get any sleep. Everyone decides to fix all the planks together and row towards the sun. While other people debate another direction, the whole crew listens to your final word. The sun is scorching and everyone's energy is low. There's no fresh water to drink. No one can catch fish for eating. There's still the ever-looming threat of sharks and the kraken. One of your crew members spots something in the distance, which appears to be an island. Everyone cheers and hugs each other and paddles their way there. After a few hours, you reach the island and stuff your hands in the sand. Someone is running around, while others embrace the sand and palm trees. But for some reason, something seems off. Some birds are flying around. They aren't scared of you. Everyone moves to the center of the island to discover if anyone has been here before. A small campfire sits in the middle of the island, but there are no signs of people anywhere. This island's too small to have any residents. There seems to be no sign of anyone who has ever visited it, besides the campfire. After a while, the island starts moving. Everyone climbs a tree, and water covers the island. In the distance, you see a large figure emerge from the water and turn towards you. It's a giant sea turtle. You were on the back of a giant sea turtle this whole time. It moves gracefully across the water and stops after a couple of hours. The crew members build some huts and start a fire to cook some food and sleep comfortably. You look out in the distance and at the night sky with the stars populating the horizon. You climb the highest tree to get some rest and peace. Far away, you see the kraken swimming around and getting closer to the turtle. But compared to it, the kraken is only the size of a shoe compared to a person. The next day, you tread around and discover the rest of the Turtleback Island. Some unique animals you've never seen before are living here. Some of the most exotic birds are flying around, and the animals don't seem to take you as a threat. You reach the top of the mountain covered with trees and vines to get a good look at the island. You have a panoramic view of everything and discover that there's a huge hole in the ground right below you. And you see what appears to be digging tools left by other explorers. You gather your crew and rush to the hole. You have to make your way through vines and climb over some challenging terrain to reach there. The main question is, where does this hole go if the bottom of this island is a giant turtle shell? You step on the site and see many abandoned tools and plans. You pick up a map and see that there is an X marking for treasures beyond anyone's imagination. You gather your crew. Everyone picks up some of the equipment. Another scary question is, why did they abandon this equipment? You study the plans. They state all the steps except the final one, which no one seems to have figured out. After a while, you descend the hole and make your way towards the bottom. But what you discover is even more shocking than what you expected. And you'll have to find out what it is next time.
You are a marine biologist who is on a mission to explore organisms that live in the deeper and darker parts of the ocean. As you prepare to dive, your ship's object detection system starts beeping. Something within the water is approaching, and it's really fast, and it seems like it's a Megalodon! You try to take your oxygen tank and other diving equipment off to prepare for what's to come. But in the blink of an eye, the Megalodon attacks your ship, breaking it into two pieces like the Titanic. You fall into the cold waters of the ocean. You immediately try to swim back to the surface in a panic, but the Megalodon notices you. You know you're not fast enough to escape. As the Megalodon swims towards you, your survival instinct takes control. You curl your body to minimize its surface area and decrease your risk of injury. Then the Megalodon opens its 11-foot wide mouth. force of the water pushes you against the back of its throat, which is wide enough to fit a small car. Fortunately, you are able to grab onto one of its 276 teeth as tightly as you can until its jaw slaps shut with a loud banging sound. Thanks to that, you don't immediately end up in its stomach. You are in its mouth, standing on its tongue, which is almost larger than a couch. With panic, you try to push your way out of its mouth, but its jaw muscles are extremely strong. You start waiting for it to open its mouth on its own so that you'll swim out. But when it finally does, the water pressure is so strong that it even pushes you further back from its throat. You try holding onto the roof of its mouth, but it is too slippery for you to get a grip on. So you finally end up in its stomach. It's so dark inside there. While your eyes slowly adjust, you start hearing its heart. There is still no oxygen, so you keep your diving gear on. Good thing you didn't get a chance to take it off before. However, if you were able to take your snorkel off, it would smell rotten due to the methane gases. You start looking around and see the stomach is full of the remains of the Megalodon's previous meals. There are skeletal remains of fish and sharks all around, and even other divers who weren't as lucky as you. Fortunately, the wetsuit you're wearing is super protective. You start feeling more pressure around you, which means the Megalodon started its descent deeper into the ocean. The rising panic causes your muscles to twitch. You start feeling extremely exhausted. That's why you need to do something now, and do something fast if you want to make it out alive. You remember that your diving equipment includes an emergency knife. It's small, but it's really sharp. You take that out and try cutting through the Megalodon's skin. The Megalodon's swimming slowly gets weird as you continue trying to cut your way out. You can tell it doesn't want you inside itself anymore, so it finally barfs you out, making you the only survivor of a Megalodon attack.